Welcome to our latest video in our GCSE revision series. This video is on the topic of alcohols. By the end of this video lesson, you should have an improved understanding of how to name and draw structural formulae for members of the alcohol family, and you should also be able to explain how ethanol can be made from sugars during fermentation and be aware of the uses of ethanol along with their social, economic and environmental impacts. Now, just as in other videos in the GCSE revision series, we're going to focus on answering exam questions. Now, the first exam question we're going to look at comes in two parts, part A and part B. So here's part A, read through the question, pause the video, have a go at it, and then we'll look at part B. So here's part B, once again read through the question, pause the video, have a go at it, and then we'll go for the answers. So in question 1A, you have a table which shows the names, molecular formulae and structural formulae of some alcohols, and all you have to do is complete the table. So methanol is the first alcohol here, and the structural formula is drawn for you. So the molecular formula is simply how many carbons, hydrogens and oxygens there are. So it's CH3OH, or you could write down CH4O, because that's also the molecular formula. Now the second alcohol is ethanol, and they've drawn the molecular formula, C2H5OH. So the structural formula is where you have to draw out all the bonds. So we have two carbons, and I have to make sure that each carbon has 4 bonds. So I'm going to put 3 hydrogens around the first carbon, and the second carbon has 2 hydrogens, and then a bond to an oxygen, and then a bond to a hydrogen. Now it's okay not to put in the bond between the O and the H when you draw an alcohol. You can just draw it like I've drawn in here, where I have C2H5 and then a bond to an OH. I don't have to put the bond between the O and the H. Now the next alcohol in the series is propanol, and the molecular formula is C3H7OH. Now there's 2 versions of propanol. These are called isomers. And an isomer is where you have the same molecular formula but a different structure. So I could put the OH on carbon 1, the first carbon, and that's what they've done here in the table. Or I could put it on the second carbon, the middle carbon. So they've put it on the first carbon, so that's called propan-1ol. So if it was on the second carbon, the middle carbon, it would be called propan-2ol. So for this question, they'll allow propanol, and they'll also allow propan-1ol because the OH is on carbon 1. They won't allow propan-2ol because the OH is on carbon 1, not 2. So this is a 3-mark question, and there's 1 mark for each row completely correct. Now question 1B shows a diagram of apparatus that could be used to make ethanol by fermentation. Now fermentation is where you make alcohol from sugar solution. So we have glucose here go in to form ethanol and a gas. Now the gas that you produce in fermentation is carbon dioxide, so you get 1 mark if you write CO2 here. And then you have to balance the equation. So I've got 6 carbons on the left, so I need to put a 2 in front of the CO2, so that will give me 6 carbons on the right. And then it would be balanced because there would be 12 hydrogens on either side and 6 oxygens on either side, and we have a balanced chemical equation. So this is a 2-mark question. You get 1 for correctly writing CO2 and 1 for the correct balancing. Now part 2 says yeast acts as a catalyst in the process. Give the reason why catalysts are written above the arrow in equations. And this is because a catalyst doesn't take part in the reaction. It's not used up. It's not changed into anything else. So that's why we write it above the arrow and we don't write it as part of the chemical equation. So if you said that, you get 1 mark. Now it's important to remember that the reason that yeast acts as a catalyst here is it contains an enzyme, a biological catalyst, and when working with enzymes you need to work at a temperature between around 30 to 35 degrees C, because if you go to a higher temperature the enzyme will denature or break down, and therefore the reaction would take place too slowly. So here's our second practice question. Once again, read through the question, pause the video, have a go at it, and then we'll go for the answers. So in this second practice question, we have a table which shows the number of people admitted to a particular hospital for treatment of the effects of alcohol abuse over a period of 5 years. And the question is asking you to state how the number of people treated for the effects of alcohol abuse has changed over time, according to this table. So if you look at the table, you can see that it has increased. So if you said it's increased, you get 1 mark. And then you're asked to give a social problem caused by alcohol abuse. Well, a social problem is a problem that affects society. So therefore, you could go for something like drink driving, because that is a social problem, a problem that affects society caused by alcohol abuse. Or you could also go for something like domestic violence. So if you said drink driving or domestic violence, you would get 1 mark here. Now for part 3, you're asked to state one possible effect of long-term alcohol abuse on an individual's health. Well, alcohol abuse causes a number of health conditions. The obvious answer would be liver damage here for 1 mark, but you could also write down that it causes depression, it also causes heart disease, so those would be some good examples of answers for this question. Now for part B, it says alcohol is used as a biofuel. State one advantage and one disadvantage of the use of alcohol as a biofuel. Now, as alcohol can be produced from sugars during fermentation, and sugarcane is a crop that you would grow to produce the alcohol in fermentation, it's classed as a renewable resource, and it's also classed as being carbon neutral because plants take in the carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, and that would compensate for the CO2 that would be produced when you burn alcohol. So an advantage of alcohol as a biofuel would be that it's carbon neutral and it's a renewable energy resource. So if you said either of them, you get 1 mark. Now, a disadvantage would be that it's land intensive to grow sugarcane. And by land intensive, we mean it takes a lot of land to grow sugarcane. And if you devote a lot of your farmland to growing sugarcane, you have less land available to grow crops for food. Now, having less land available to grow crops for food means that food prices go up and the cost of living goes up in your country. So that would be a disadvantage of using alcohol as a biofuel. Now, another disadvantage of using alcohol as a biofuel is it's not as efficient as fuels such as petrol. And that means you get less energy when you burn 1 gram of ethanol compared to burning 1 gram of, say, petrol. So it's less efficient compared to fuels such as petrol. So that would be another disadvantage. Now part B is a 2-mark question. There's 1 mark for a sensible advantage and 1 mark for a sensible disadvantage. So that concludes this video lesson. So after watching this video, you should now have an improved understanding of how to name and draw structural formulae for members of the alcohol family, and you should also be able to explain how ethanol could be made from sugars during fermentation and be aware of the uses of ethanol along with their social, economic and environmental impacts. That concludes our video. Thank you for watching. This and other GCSE, AS and A-level chemistry videos can be found in our YouTube channel, Dr. O Chemistry.